Everyone, good afternoon. I'm not sure what time it is yet. I don't have my watch on. For me, it's definitely morning. I'm a night person. But let me welcome everyone today on this beautiful sunny day. Check out the view we have. Isn't it beautiful? Love this. So enjoy the sunshine because I know I will. I want to say good morning and welcome everyone to the 34th Anniversary Awards Luncheon of the Afrocentric Personal Development Shop, honoring those community heroes and sheroes that are change agents and making real differences in the lives of others and doing transformative work here in Central Ohio. I'm Yolanda Harris, news anchor at WBNS 10 TV, and I'm so delighted to be here to serve as your MC and help out. Over the next hour and a half, we're centering our focus on breaking the silence of domestic violence in our community, as we recognize October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Listen to this. In the United States, according to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, 10 million people a year are physically abused by an intimate partner. 20,000 calls a day are placed to domestic violence hotlines, and 1 in 4 women and 1 in 3 men will experience domestic violence in their lifetime. And bringing it closer to home, that same study states 38% of Ohio women and 33% of Ohio men experience intimate partner physical violence, intimate partner rape, and or intimate partner stalking in their lifetimes. That's a large percentage. Domestic violence sometimes creates generational trauma that it's hard to talk about for many people. It's hard to see a way out for others. Agencies such as APDS help people see a way out of no way. And that's why we're here today, to talk about, to hear real stories from survivors, to hear from experts. They're going to share thoughts on what's happening and what we as a community can do about it. It's a tough topic, it's tough work, and APDS has been on the front lines working to address the issue, helping to heal families and make them healthier and make their homes safer. Real talk, real issues, real solutions as we break the silence of domestic violence in our community. I had the pleasure of going to APDS and doing a story and just learning a lot about it, and there are ways to help. APDS is doing that, changing lives, changing people, changing their thought process. At this time, we're going to move over to our program. I'd like to ask Rodney Dunn, domestic violence counselor at APDS, to give our invocation.
Good afternoon. Let us bow our heads for a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we have so many things to be thankful for. We're so blessed that you chose the Kelseys, Barbara and even Kelsey, to found our organization 34 years ago. The spirit still thrives in the things that we do on a day-to-day basis. We thank you for our staff, our leaders, Jerry Saunders, and all the things that he does on a day-to-day basis, and all the clinicians that work each and every day to meet with the clients, to help each and every one of them resolve the issues that they may face. So Lord, we have many things to be thankful for, especially the leaders that have been recognized here. Janet Jackson and her many years of service in and around the Columbus community, the courts, etc. All the things that she's done with United Way. She deserves every bit of recognition that she gets. And Lord, thank you for all the things you've done for us, and bless this food that we're about to receive in the nourishment of our body. This we ask in Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen.
My auntie, she was
I want everyone to continue eating lunch, but at this time we're going to keep the program rolling as we get off to a bit of a late start. At this time, I would like to introduce someone I've known for a long time, someone very well known in this community. Jerry Saunders was actually one of my first bosses. He hired me at the YMCA when he was there. So I was like former boss. So for him, I'll do anything for Jerry, no doubt about that. CEO of APDS, Mr. Jerry Saunders. Great person, great human being, great man, great husband out here.
Thank you, Yolanda. We appreciate you all. We appreciate for all that you do in the community. We're grateful for your contribution of time to APDS and your time and your treasure. It's been ongoing over the years, and we really do appreciate you. So let's give her a hand, please. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming out this afternoon and supporting this outstanding institution. Today, we commemorate our 34th anniversary and honor our APDS Community Service Award recipients. 34 years of service requires a great foundation and incredible vision. We have both through our founders, Dr. Richard Mariba Kelsey and Barbara Kelsey. We offer programs to address alcohol and other drugs abuse, and in particular, APDS, Freedom from Abusive Relationships, which is a domestic violence intervention prevention program designed for male batterers. Thank you to Jean and Debbie Griffin. They're not here today, but they are the creators of the Griffin Family Foundation for their caring and philanthropic mindset to help support this institution as our platinum sponsor and giving APDS a tremendous boost to our 2022 annual giving campaign. I want to give them a hand. They're very supportive of it. The Afrocentric Personal Development Shop Incorporated was created, as I said, by a husband and wife team, Dr. Mariba Kelsey and Dr. Barbara Kelsey, on July the 4th, 1988. APDS was certified as a 501c3 nonprofit organization on December the 18th, 1988. In 2017, the APDS Board of Directors decided to celebrate our annual anniversary in October as part of our observation and participation in National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. The common themes of Domestic Violence Awareness Month are connecting those who work to end violence, which we have a lot of partners in here today, celebrating those who have survived, and mourning those who have died because of domestic violence. Our theme at APDS is making families healthier and safer. As we all know, strong families make strong communities. Strong communities meet the needs of the people to support a pleasant quality of life for its residents and reduce the suffering of those residents underserved. We embrace a holistic approach which we call an Afrocentric approach. Decades ago, there was a war declared on drugs, and drug use was criminalized, and people were imprisoned, families torn apart physically, financially, and spiritually. Today, the demographics have shifted, and drug abuse is declared a disorder and/or an illness, which I believe is the appropriate way to address this societal issue. However, the generational damage done to families and communities when it was considered a criminal offense needs to be addressed, and restorative justice must be systemically implemented. The pandemic was difficult on APDS, as it was with many behavioral health care agencies. Nevertheless, we made it through without closing our doors, and this year we increased our annual operation budget by 50%. In addition to our clinical services for adults, we have 3 outstanding youth programs, youth prevention programs, and we use those so that we hope that those kids or young folks don't need our services when they get older. We have the UCAN, Unified Community and Neighborhood Network, which is developing youth leaders aged 11 to 21, who are community ambassadors of nonviolence. Urban Gems, and the GEM stands for Gardening, Entrepreneurs, Mobility, and Sustainability, which we have an indoor garden at 1854 Parsons, where youth 11 to 19 years old grow, harvest, and sell vegetables. It's experiential learning. So they're learning math, learning how to present, how to talk to folks, make sales and do all that business while they're learning, doing that program. And this program was transferred to us by the Ohio State University. We had partnered with them at the beginning of it 5 years ago. And then one that I'm very excited about, and I know our director came in today, Ms. Tony Walker on there, is our Smart 2.0. Everybody knows that's my favorite one. Even though all of them are great, but the 2.0 summer camp, we typically do 120 kids from around the city, and we do a 9-week camp with them all day long. You can't beat the price on it. It's a great price. I mean, it's just an exciting program for them. This year we went back to 100, but hopefully we'll go back to 120. That was because of COVID. But it's an exciting program, and most of the young folks who are in the program, we have them from 6 to 12 years of age. So it's like if you don't sign up in April, like we wait till April the 1st to sign folks up. By the end of midway through the day, it's like 2/3 is already signed up. So it's a very exciting camp that a lot of folks try to get their children in to participate. And then on top of that, we work with the City of Columbus. They have the City of Columbus Empowerment Grant, which goes to the Department of Neighborhood, and we provide funding, $10,000 to $25,000 for 12 grassroots organizations, community-based organizations out in the community. So we're working with folks that typically might have a difficult time getting some funding, or they get just so much money and need a little more. And so we're there to help them out with that. And so, as you know, we're busy. We're extremely busy. So I want to please recognize the compassionate and remarkable staff that is making families healthier and safer. The staff of APDS, if you guys could at least stand up, please. Get them hands. I know you're contracted, but you are our DO. All right, okay. And so, do we have any former staff members here also? All right. And then in addition, we are blessed with the leadership and support from an awesome group of volunteers, remarkable individuals, the APDS Board of Directors. They would please stand. Our chairman is here, I know. Daniel Chapman, thank you so much. Any former board members here? Ms. Kingdom's here. All right, great. Thank you very much. The Griffin Family Foundation, including other sponsors such as Franklin County Children's Services, the Saunders PR Group, which is my wife's company, so I'll give her a Franklin County Commissioner's Office, Nationwide Children's Hospital, Ohio Credit Union, along with the host committee from the Columbus Public Health and Friends of APDS, have gotten our 2022 annual giving campaign off to a great start. So thank you. And I know that we typically recognize the committee to put this together at the end, but I know we may be running tight on time, so I want to recognize them now. So if you guys have put the committee together under the leadership, I know Ms. Charmaine and Ms. Gill was kind of providing the leadership there, Ms. Rodriguez, you guys, if y'all stand up. Anybody else here? And then myself. All right, cool. So all of us were involved, so thank you guys for doing that. But you too can contribute by going to our website at APDS and you can click on the orange donate button to do that. Or in your program, there is a QR square in there that you can hook on and also make a donation. Oh no, we didn't put it there? Where's it at? Oh, okay. Sorry, it's on your sign, your table sign there. You just hit on that, yep, with your camera, and you can make a donation with that. So thank you for that. So the other thing is, while I know this is, we celebrate our 34 years and this is a serious issue that we talk about on domestic violence, we come today to celebrate the 34 years, but we also want to share some information that we don't normally do during domestic violence or during our program. So we talk about awareness, and that's good to aware, but it's about doing something about it. And so we're going to move the program forward to do that because as we observe and participate in this, we want to talk about making a commitment to activities, attitude, and behavior that will benefit us year-round, not just one day or not at this time, but a year-round dealing with lifetime. So thank you for all your support, and I'll turn it back over to Ms. Shanonda Harris. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Saunders. I just want to say, I've known Jerry, I think, over 30 years. He was helping kids and young people then, and I'm sure he was doing it way before he met me, and he's still doing it. So thank you for what you do in this community, and how you help kids, and how you care about them. He cares about them from the heart, so that's why we love you. We're going to invite our panelists up to the stage to join us for a conversation about their journey and what surviving looks like for them and the work that they do today in the field of domestic violence. We're going to ask them to put some solutions on the table and just have a little discussion about this issue. It may get a little uncomfortable at times, but you know, you have to talk about uncomfortable things to help and to come up with solutions to those uncomfortable things. And they say change ain't always pretty, but it's necessary. Our panelists today are bold, they're brave, brilliant women who are doing the work to help raise awareness about domestic violence and how it impacts families. And they're working to change policies and policies and practices to address the issue of domestic violence. So if I read their full bios, we'd be here all day. So please take a look at those in your programs. Our first panelist is Ashley Bowers, a Child Welfare Associate Director at Franklin County Children's Services. If you would come up, please. Give her a big round of applause. Thank you, Ashley. Our next panelist, Ms. Janet Jackson, former municipal court judge, former city attorney, and former president and CEO of the United Way of Central Ohio. And she's done so much more. Our third panelist is Dr. Elizabeth Joy, who is an author, a human behavior and business expert who provides consultative and advisory guidance. She's also president and CEO of the Columbus CEO Collective. Keep coming. I want to welcome each of you to the stage and thank you for being a part of our program today. You ready, ladies?
We're ready.
Let's start off. This is a question for all of the panelists. And just take turns giving me your thoughts on this. We define our society as civilized, yet domestic violence in all forms continues to be a growing issue. What do you attribute the continuation and increase to? Who would like to tackle that first?
I don't know why you're looking at me. I'm not supposed to be up here.
Well, she came in at the last minute. She has a wealth of knowledge.
So let's be very clear about this. In your program book, it does not have Janet Jackson as a panelist.
Miss Jackson, if you're next.
We know I have to do that. I mean, there are so many underlying causes, and some of them I think are getting worse. And even the issue, for example, of poverty that can bring on tremendous stress, inside of a family, job situations, alcohol, drugs, learned behavior from generations, before. And I don't have numbers, but I hope what you ladies might. I'm sure there was an uptick during the period of COVID when we were basically hunkered down in our homes. And not only for the adults, but I recall very clearly folks in the educational system being very concerned that there probably was an increase in violence towards children, and yet because they weren't seeing the children, because they weren't coming to school, it was going, unreported. So those conditions just continue to escalate, because at the end of the day, we have never actually resolved them.
I agree with that. I also would say in regards to the pandemic, like you said, in regards to an increase of violence, that a lot of those behaviors probably were already there, some controlling behaviors, but then further isolation, not additional linkage of community supports, further isolation from their support network, family, friends, all of that. It exacerbated the perpetrator's behaviors, which could increase them to have further controlling behaviors as well as additional physical violence as well.
Agreed on all of that. I think you asked the question in various forms, and I think that traditionally when we think about domestic violence, we think about physical violence, but domestic violence, physical violence may not be present, and domestic violence is active, right? So I think misconceptions about what is domestic violence also facilitates a space to allow this issue to continue, because many of us would say, I don't know anyone who's severely being beaten, right? And I would certainly do something if I saw it, right? So if we narrow down the definition of domestic violence to be physical violence, then we can all say to ourselves, well, that's not something I see or deal with, so therefore, there's not really something for me to do about that. But domestic violence is about power and control. And so we see a lot of, I'm sure none of you in the room, but there could be someone in the room who may not realize you're in a domestic violence relationship and you don't know it because you've never been hit, right? And so if you are in a controlling relationship, that's domestic violence. And so I think that facilitates an environment where we're looking at this really extreme version of it. And if we don't see that, then that's not part of the conversation. Therefore, how can we make progress on something that is just only in its this extreme definition of it?
Also emotional and mental abuse, I think, as well, just another problem. Dr. Joy, we're talking to you. Many of our domestic violence programs, they have in-depth curriculums about power and control, the power and control wheel versus equality wheel in relationships. We're just talking about power and control. There doesn't appear to be any in-depth research on male privilege when discussing domestic violence. Do you have any thoughts about how addressing the cultural belief of male privilege could help decrease domestic violence?
I do. And shout out to Jerry as well. I was also hired by Jerry back in 1922. That's one of my earlier roles, and so I did have the pleasure of working at APDS, and I told Jerry honestly one of the greatest pleasures I've had in my career, having worked with folks suffering from homelessness, to folks who are perpetrating domestic violence, to victims of it, to executives, is what I focus on today. With some of my most memorable moments, so shout out to you, Jerry, for that. But I think the answer to that question really ties with what I was already saying. So, you know, the term that we're using is male privilege, right? And what does that mean? The idea that men see gender differences or inequalities and expect, right, that being a man means you're here and being a woman means you're here, right? And so I don't know, a lot of the treatment, you know, we do a lot of treatment for victims, right? And I know, Jerry, you get a lot of heat for treatment and support and education for perpetrators, but how are we going to get to a better space if we're not supporting the folks who are perpetrators, right? Because they are humans with stories, and it doesn't validate their behavior, but it does speak to the fact that they need more than being berated for their behavior in order to get to a different space. But I think this speaks to the greater issue, and we have a lot of African American Black folks in the room. We're in the middle of this movement, right? And we're talking about equality, and right now the focus is on racial equality, but what ends up happening is we also miss some of these differences in expectations and beliefs about the gender component, right? And so when I think about domestic violence and the male privilege component, you know, we're still living in a society where even women can buy into this perspective that a man should be here and a woman should be here, or a man's role is this and a woman's role is that. So when we're still in a space where we're not comfortable talking about or addressing the fact that the way we see men and the way we condition them, and I struggle with some of this because there's a lot of blaming, and again, perpetrators have to be held accountable. But at some point, we have to look at the conditioning that happens with a human when they're born and in society, right? Whether it's media, or news, movies, music, or just our everyday lives, the way in which folks are conveyed is either reinforcing something that we don't want to be, or we don't believe in really, or not. And that's part of the movement for equality, really, is looking at how are we being portrayed, and does that align with who we are? And so I think this, again, comes into, we do need to help hold men accountable, and we need men to hold themselves accountable, but we need to hold ourselves accountable as parents to say, are you parenting in a way that is reinforcing these gender differences that have little boys being raised to believe that they shouldn't be emotional and that they are more powerful, and while you're not telling your daughter that she's powerful, or you're teaching your daughter to be timid or whatever it is. So sometimes we are the reinforcers of the things that we're standing against and not realizing, because of these more subconscious realities and definitions, we're contributing to it. So hopefully that answers your question.
It does, and I think parents have an even larger responsibility these days, because you're battling, like you said, music. You're battling movies. Right. Look at what you see there. Look at what our kids are listening to as far as the popular music of the day. And it's just incredible. And the way they talk about women and talk about treating women, and these young kids listen to this, and these are their idols. We're fighting that. Ms. Bowers, what are possible effects on families, and in particular children, since we're talking about that, who experience and witness domestic violence in their homes? That generational.
Yes, so there's multiple different pathways of harm that a perpetrator can have on children. The most obvious is physical harm, and that can be actual harm due to an incident. It can be the behavioral disruptions, or them children having behavioral issues, mental health concerns. You also can have developmental delays. And then you have that adverse impact in regards to trauma and safety issues. But then you also have to look at the other factors that it can affect the other partner's parenting, interference with their parenting in regards to meeting their child's basic needs, interference of having their focus being on the perpetrator. It could have some intersections in regards to causing potentially mental health. PTSD, depression, anxiety, and there can be other intersecting issues of substance use and exacerbating those substance use. It also can impact family ecology in regards to instability, homelessness, like the financial piece, social disruptions to family supports, community supports, and educational disruptions for children too. So there's many different pathways.
Ms. Jackson, can you talk about the role, you've been a judge, you've been a city attorney, can you talk about the role our criminal justice system has and or can have in impacting our domestic violence crisis?
Actually, when Jerry first called me to share that I had been selected today as an honoree, I shared a story, and I'm going to share that story here today. Some of you are old enough to recall that I went on the bench in 1987, decades ago. And when I went on the Franklin County Municipal Court bench, I had not practiced criminal law, and I had never really practiced in that court. It is the municipal court that sees the vast majority of domestic violence cases. I had a case, so back then in 1987, if you were charged with the act of domestic violence and you were arrested, you were brought downtown, but someone could post bail for you, $65, and you would get out. And so the first time you came to court, you came to what we would call the out arraignment court. I was sitting that day in the out arraignment court, and there was a gentleman who was there with the support of his pastor and his pastor's wife. And I believe that the pastor had actually posted, the bond. Again, in this courtroom, you're not typically pleading guilty. You typically are going to say, I'm not guilty. I want a jury trial, or I want a trial by a judge, and I want a speedy trial, or I don't want a speedy trial. This gentleman that day asked if he could have a continuance, which is very typical, so that he could retain a lawyer. I granted him that continuance. That night, he killed his wife, he killed his child, he killed either a niece or a nephew, and he killed himself. That case changed me forever on this topic of domestic violence. Because one of the things that we weren't doing in the Franklin County Municipal Court, but that the Ohio law said you could, was to hold someone who had been accused of domestic violence until he or she, although typically he, could come before a judge in the in-arraignment court, where you could hear from the prosecutor more information about the incident, but most importantly, you could hear from the victim, because the victim could appear, request a temporary protection order. That hearing would be held right there. The only other female on the bench at the time was, you may recall her more as Congresswoman Deborah Price. But Deborah and I were colleagues. We were the only two women, I think, out of 13 judges. It took us months, if not longer, to convince our fellow male judges to change our processes, and even longer to change their thinking on the subject of domestic violence. So I would say since 1987 and now, there have been significant changes. I had to check in with some folks today at the prosecutor's office. Yes, if you are arrested, you still must be held. Hearing must be held if the victim comes down and requests, a TPO. I would say another change that occurred is that within law enforcement, over these many years, they take this crime much more seriously than they did. And one of the things that I learned today, I chatted with Mary Lynn Caswell, who now leads the domestic violence unit of the city prosecutor's office. They're going to begin a pilot program. They'll have to choose a neighborhood or neighborhoods, but they will actually have advocates They will have city attorney advocates going out with the police officers on calls of domestic violence, being able to provide more moral support to the victim right then and there, not waiting until the next day, being able to answer questions. So, and Yolanda, you gave the numbers earlier, the national numbers, and yes, they're staggering. I just want to share Columbus's numbers. On an average year, in the city of Columbus only, there are 4,000 charges of domestic violence. And I make the distinction of the city of Columbus because it doesn't include the suburbs that also come into the Franklin County Municipal Court. I think that this number is one that has changed. She says now that they are referring approximately 200 cases for felonies. And that was a rarity when I was on the bench. I mean, it's just what would happen between strangers would readily be called a felony assault, but between individuals who knew each other, partners, it was a misdemeanor, punishable by up to 6 months in jail and/or $1,000 fine. And I certainly saw cases where definitely people should have been looking at significant incarceration time in the felony system.
It brings me back to the male privilege. You were speaking, when this happened with you and you wanted change to happen, you were one of 2 female judges and there was reluctance on the side of the male judges. Is that the male privilege thing where they're not seeing women in the light they should as a legitimate victim who needs protection?
I'm going to add another group because I'm pretty sure that the majority of prosecutors at that time were also male. That's not true now. The prosecutors were very quick to ask one of the judges to take this from an M1 domestic violence to an M4 disorderly conduct, because that's how they perceived it. And I don't know, I wrestle with the male privilege, perspective. I say the perspective that what happens in someone's home is no one else's business.
Like
But
a
what
private
goes on
matter.
in that home, it's not for me, to judge. So if that all ties in to privilege, I would say yes. I would just say that in terms of our thinking about this crime, and it is a crime, we've come a very long way.
And thank goodness. I'm going to go to Ms. Bowers. Can you tell us about the Safe and Together model and the benefits for implementing that?
Yes, the Safe and Together model is a framework in regards to help child protective services have better case practice, getting us more domestic violence informed. It improves better collaboration amongst cross systems that we interact with, and also better decision making. So in regards, and that's specific to cases involving children with the intimate partner violence component. So it involves an improved dynamics in regards to improved assessment, interviewing, documentation, and case planning. It's a perpetrator pattern focused model, so focusing on perpetrators' behaviors and holding perpetrators as giving higher expectations for them as parents. And additionally, the model of Safe and Together is embedded in the philosophy of that children are best served with the non-offending parent, which is the survivor and most oftentimes the mother. So working with our survivor and partnering with them, we can improve safety and well-being with our children.
I have an additional question, closing question for all of you, and whoever wants to answer first, feel free. What corrective action or actions can you recommend for us as a society to consider significantly decreasing or eliminating domestic violence? As a society, what action, corrective action or actions can be recommended?
I think I think so often when we want to fix something, we're all busy, right? We have so much going on, trying to juggle our jobs and our all these roles that we have. And so I think everyone wants to do better, but it's just like, okay, well, that's a whole another program we got to design or a whole thing we got to do. And so there are things we need to do, but I think a simple, you can start today, you can start in this moment solution is a mindset shift. And so as I listened and watched the crowd respond to these statistics and this story of violence, if we were to react the same way you all did to domestic violence and or related power control, emotional abuse, imbalances in how men and women are treated in our everyday lives, if we were to gasp, right, and take those moments more serious so that we don't get to that story of someone dying, right? We start to get in a prevention mindset, right? Because that, to the male privilege or the mindset of, I am born having opportunities that you don't have. You are born to serve me. All that kind of mindset and power control stuff that happens, right? That other of us may not go that far with it, but just in how we're showing up in our everyday lives to one another, if we were to react to seeing that and being more thoughtful in that, we start to get in prevention, right? So that Jerry, as much as we love what he does, we'd love to put him out of business, right? Because he doesn't need to have that type of program, in his organization. So for me, it's like the mindset shift of thinking about this way before we get there, because in a domestic violence situation, that violence that ends in folks dying, there's usually a long trajectory to that. It doesn't typically start with physical violence for the relationships that do get to violence. It starts with these little things, these little power moves, these little pressing comments, right? And over time it evolves. And so let's think prevention. Well, how do we prevent? We shift our mindsets about what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman, what are the expectations, and let's have that type of response early on, right? In those behaviors that start to evolve to that type of behavior.
So we are talking about what corrective actions to take, what can be done to decrease this. Janet talked about the legal system and how it's come, a long way. And I would imagine that has saved some lives or made some sort of difference from the time when you were there to what's going on now. Are there any other things that you would add that could, as a society, what you could recommend for us to significantly decrease it? It's a
The
tough
situation of just violence. And yes, we're here today to talk about domestic violence, but think about the issue of violence in our community. Was it just within the last 2 weeks that we lost 3 Black female teenagers, to violence? So it's hard for me to just look at one particular area. And something just came to mind. Years ago, there was a calendar that was put out. I don't know who actually published it, but everyone in the calendar was African American, and one was Les Wright. And remember our wonderful councilwoman, Les Wright. And she said, what our community needs? We need more front porches and fewer fenced-in backyards. And basically what she was saying is, we're not a community. I mean, we can do the hype that I hear about Columbus this and Columbus that, but at the end of the day, and I don't care if you live in my neighborhood, Berwick, or if you're living somewhere else, are we truly community? Do we care about each other? Do we know about each other? Do we teach, our children that? So to me, the problem is much bigger, broader, and it, quite frankly, depresses me, because I'm just not so sure, where we're going with our children, with the issue of domestic violence. And I don't want to be a downer, but still, just what's happening when it comes to restoring the village that we used to have. Where's the village that can address all of these issues, right? I mean, I grew up and I've always said you shouldn't introduce people, right, when you're up here. But for those of you who can see her, that beautiful woman at that table is my mother.
Your twin?
That's my twin. That's my mom. And we were raised in dirt poor Southern Virginia, but we had a village. And we didn't have children's services, and we didn't have this, we didn't have that. If someone stepped out of line, the community took care of it. You know, the other men took care of it. And I'm not saying we should have vigilante justice, you know, but we accept things. So when do we stop accepting? Amy?
Yes, so on my lens, in regards to child welfare, once we have the cases, I would say that one thing that can be to better improve is cross-system collaboration. And so when we're working with entities within the community for us as a system, our caseworkers talking with the community providers that are linked for them to understand what the patterns of course of control are, for them to be able to address those, as well as making sure the perpetrator's not further controlling them through therapy or other means, so that cross-system collaboration is really important.
And Janet, as you mentioned, as a community, what are we doing as a community to look out for each other? I want to ask each of you advice on, they always say, see something, say something. But a lot of times we're scared. I remember a time when I had my first apartment right out of college, had my first job, and I was in my first little apartment off Carl Road, and my bedroom was up against the next bedroom of the next apartment. And I knew this couple in and out, they had a daughter, and one night I was awakened because I heard the wall thumping, they were arguing, and I could hear him beating her, she's crying. And at the time I was just frozen because I was scared. I'd never been around anything like that, I never heard anything like that. And my head was, oh, if I call the police on them, she's gonna stay with them and then they're gonna hate me, and you know what I mean? And I regret that to this day. I felt like I was a coward because I didn't stand up for her. Any advice on, you know, if you see something or how to handle a situation like that?
I'm actually remembering my first apartment down on Summit at OSU. My neighbors downstairs, I remember, and I literally felt sick to my stomach because I heard it now. I was saying something, right? But I think to sort of inspire and push through, because I honor that fear you had. The only thing worse than them not liking you because you reported is she dies. So I would say assume the worst and say something, right? Because to the story that Janet shared, right? You don't know when it's going to go there. And so I'm like, you can hate me, girl, but I was trying to look out.
You're older, I'm older now, I go knock on the door, like, cut that out, or not, you know what I mean? But yeah, back then I just froze, I was scared, I didn't know what to do, and I thought,
And don't intervene yourself.
You don't have to, I don't believe, share names, etc. Because legitimately, you might have a right to be fearful. You don't know if there are guns, involved, but call 911, call the professionals.
I was also going to say that a lot of times we don't, we may recognize things of controlling behaviors. It starts, as Ms. Joy talked about, in regards to, it starts before the violence, like little controlling behaviors. If you're seeing those things, something just doesn't seem right. A lot of times, if they're in it, they don't recognize those controlling behaviors of having rules for each other, not able to, they're calling all the time, checking on them, send me a picture where you're at, or giving them a budget of this is how much money you have, or not having any financial control, little things like that. But also thinking about our teenagers and how, like, teenage violence and that control that the relationships can have with social media and how you follow people and that sort of thing. So catching it early and talking with young, children, young teenagers in regards to their relationships too.
Well, I want to thank all of you for participating in the panel today. Thank you for your stories, your wisdom, your guidance, and your information. We appreciate it. Let's give all our panelists a big round of applause. And I hand things back to Mr. Jerry Sanders.
Thank you to the panelists and to Yolanda. Thank you so much. A lot of great information. And we're running tight on time, so we're not going to bring the podium back up, but we do have some folks that we got to recognize that have done some outstanding work within the community. So I want to thank you. Now, one part that I still say the Honorable, because once you get that, I'll just say the Honorable Janet Jackson did say, she talked about the challenge that they had. But one of the reasons she's recognized today was because she made it happen. Yeah. She did make it happen. She changed that course system and made it happen. And I just want to thank her for coming up today because Mrs. Clark had a family emergency and couldn't make it. And we were thinking about, okay, how do we handle this? Because we just want to make sure she takes care of her family on there. But got to thinking, and I said, well, you know, we got Serena or Michael Jordan sitting in the audience. You might well ask them to come on up. So she graciously came on up and filled in. So I want to thank you so much for that. And Dr. Joy, and I thank you guys so much for information. I could go on, but I'm not because we're getting ready to close out because there's a lot of things going on and some things we don't even look at, like when we take our vows. A lot of times women take the vows more serious than the guys and they say, they're not going to leave, you know, when you take those vows. And the guys are looking at, it's just a lot of things in there. So that male privilege thing is a major piece that we do have to deal with all the time. And so when you're raising your folks, raising your young folks, male and female, I'll say this one quick story. Sometimes when folks graduate at APDS, and I used to go into the class, I tell those guys, you know, you get mad at that young man who's being aggressive towards your daughter. You get mad at him. But you might be getting mad at it yourself, your younger self. Because you think about it. I think about it. I tell my wife all the time, you more and more, you just like my mother. She said, you just like my daddy. Right? So they end up marrying somebody that's going to be just like you, and you can see the body language on them go, ooh. Because that daughter loves people just like the daddy, and so now you just perpetuating that. So you just gotta, it's just something we gotta really deal with because it doesn't make any sense for us to be civilized and for this to keep going. So we're gonna take this time now and recognize some folks. The first person on there, the next Soel, who used to work at APDS, just making it happen, still kind of works at APDS, even though she volunteers all the time doing things. So it's in the program, and I don't want to shortchange you and minimize what you're doing, but guys, you got to read about these folks that are in there. But she serves on the board. She's a former treasurer on the board, and we do the giveaway for Thanksgiving, the toys and all that kind of stuff, and they have it all hooked up. People have their cars be lined up around the corner doing that hookup. So we just needed to recognize her for what she's done, Miss Lynette Soel, and she is the community service board. Yes, the name right. And I know we don't have much time. Do you want to say anything? No. This next brother, he's gonna say something. This next brother Cecil Ahad, we've been working together. Ashley, when you talk about people working together in the community, we've been doing this for a long time, making things happen a lot of different ways. He's an entrepreneur, author, businessman, a community builder. And whenever we need to get something going, we call Brother Cecil, he's right there, he's getting involved, he's talking to the people. He knows everybody, everything that's going on in the community. And when I say everything, you know, when I say, my mother used to tell me class is somebody can talk to any and everybody, regardless of what level they on. And he talks to any and everybody, he talks to the folks, south side, north side, east side, whatever, that's out in the street, and you go down to the mayor's office and tell the mayor, hey, look, you need to do this, or you're not doing whatever. And the people listen to him. So this next brother, Cecil Ahad, I want to bring him on up here. Above and beyond the world. know he'll have a couple words to say. And I know some folks have to leave early and on. I know we're trying to do 1 o'clock, got a couple minutes. Brother Cecil, let me quit talking, we'll come on up. And our board chair, you know, earlier, he was running behind because of his job, but Brandon Chapman, we'll give him a hand over the wheel.
First of all, thank God. And thank my wife. Thank Jerry, because a couple of days ago when Jerry called to congratulate me, and I'm like, come on, there's no, I don't know if he said, Cecil, just say thank you. You know, it's being recognized, and he's right. I'm really, really very thankful and with him from my heart. And it's just like domestic violence, it's community work. It's the same way. There's so many things to it. Is that not just people think community work, they think of, oh, the little kids, they're working with the kids, but it's everything. And it's and as far as the domestic violence goes, because we need Jerry, thank God that they do have a place where these men can go. And it is men privilege. That's just the reality of it. And the sadder news to it all is it's going to get worse. Because these men out here, it's the society and the life and the way it is, it's worse. So we just have to keep trying to encourage people and take care of ourselves. All right, and again, thank you, Ms. Jerry Gill, the whole staff committee. Thank you.
Thank you. And this next one, and I am going to say this, I got to say this. It's, you know, sometimes it seems like it's a flood of issues going on, but you just never know. You got to be thinking ahead, because right now it seems like there's a lot of divisiveness that's going on. We keep dividing ourselves in all kinds of ways, whether it's not just gender, but religion, everything else, where we live and all of that. And the truth of the matter, a lot of it's just made up stuff. Yeah. It's just made up stuff that we keep perpetuating. So Gail told me, my wife Gail told me the other day, she said, you know what, I'm gonna quit saying race, because somebody made that up, so I'm just gonna quit saying it. And so we need to deal with that, folks, because it's stuff that is not real, that keeps us divided, whether it's religion or anything. I'm not trying to be disrespectful of what anybody thinks, but we gotta shift this, because we just keep getting more divisive. And we look at our leadership. If you're selling a product on the news, they're going to check you to make sure that what you're selling is worthy. But if you're doing a commercial and running for office, you can say whatever you want to say. And so our young folks don't get it. You know, they're young, they don't get it, but these are our leaders saying whatever they want to say, and it's just ridiculous. So we just got to keep on, like he said, the odds were against you, and what'd you do? You kept on plugging, right? And I knew when we went down to find out about domestic violence, we had to go through y'all's court. They was like, can't go to the news, these ladies got this locked down. And we had to go through them and show them that what we were about was serious. And so, just want to recognize her. Y'all, you see her bio, there's a lot going on there. Right now, she's chairing this civilian review committee that we've added here in the city of Columbus. I mean, I know she's supposed to be retired, and that's a big piece, but yeah, you know, we love you, respect you, and care for you so much. If you'll come on up, this is a lifetime of excellence achievement award. Fast, and we didn't pull out the awards, and I know Gail's going to tell me later, you should have pulled out the awards. It's right now. Show this right quick.
If you see me moving slowly, I had back surgery on August the 5th. And so today was actually my first day of physical therapy, so it's going to take me a while to get that, you know, back.
You're all right. And the other recipients, we need to get pictures too after she finishes, so everybody can.
I just want to say thank you. This community has, I told you, we are from Virginia. We are from Virginia, but I've lived here essentially since 1978, except for 11 months when I moved to that place up north, Cleveland. I've had an incredible career, and I've been able to have it because of all of you. So I just want to thank you for that. Thank you for giving me the honor of serving you. Thank you.
I want to take a personal reference here. We've been on each other a long time. If we somewhere, if we somewhere and the Atomic Dog come on, our dance partner, we can break it down, don't
We do.
we?
And we have for like birthday to birthday. Well, my 70th is in 2 weeks. And I will not be physically able to do the dog the way I
All right, thank you. So we do want to thank everybody, but we do need to get some more photos. Lynette Cecil and anybody else on there, we're going to take some photos. I want to say thank you to everybody for coming out and supporting APDS here. Again, thanks to the committee, Charmaine, Chandra, Ronrika, and what? Two more, who are? Oh, but I don't think they're here. Oh, Dr. Wicks maybe? Oh, okay. Oh, great, I'm sorry. Thanks for keeping me together. All right. So we have, oh, you, boy, Cherry, you want to recognize Dr. Wicks? Come on. Yeah, come on. Dr. Wicks, and then we got a presentation.
All righty. Well, we want to thank, on behalf of APDS and especially the board of directors, as she is waving her hands no. We told you months ago that we were really wanted to dedicate you for your time, your service, and your leadership to all the young leaders within APDS. So we have this on behalf of you. Thank you, Dr. Wicks.
We're getting after it. We'll get some votes. And then, you got a special because Ms. Yolanda, I know you gotta get ready to take off, but if you come on up, because you have been with us for several years here on this, doing this.
I know,
So,
those pictures, I was like, oh my God, I did comb my hair like
so here is, we want to give you some flowers. We left the base on it because if you put it in the car, it won't fall over, right? So we want to do that, and then we want to do one of your favorites, box of chocolate. All right, so. Let me get down here in the picture. All right, so I'm okay now? All right. So we're going to close it out. So I want to just say thank you to everyone. I was getting ready to thank the committee again. I knew we were going to run out of time, but I want to thank Charmaine, Ronrika, Chandra, Gail, Giselle, who's not here. Ricardo, right. And who else is? Amber. And Amber. Oh yeah, Amber laid out the program for us. So I want to thank you all. Thank you very much. Let's give them a hand. Thank you all for coming. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Thank you.